Our special guest is recording artist, singer, songwriter, guitarist Brian Ray. A lot of you may also know him as the guitarist in Paul McCartney's band. So first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show, not once, but a second time.
Hey, Paul, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me back, man.
It is absolutely a pleasure. Who is Brian Ray?
Let me go make some calls, and I'll see if I can find out for you. No. Who is Brian Ray? Brian Ray is a guy who was born and raised in the West Coast in Southern California, Glendale, California, otherwise known as the gateway to Burbank, in the mid-50s. So I'm a guy who's in his early 50s who somehow got lucky enough to recognize and to adore rock and roll when rock and roll was brand new, you know. I had an older sister, 15 years older than me, a half-sister, who turned me on to Elvis Presley when she was a senior in high school and I was 3. Elvis, Little Richard, you know, the Everly Brothers, Rick Nelson, and started playing these records for me and showing me their pictures as she babysat me with her girlfriends. And so girlfriends were like screaming and giggling over these pictures, and I just said, oh my God, well, that's where the action is. Even at 3 years old, I knew it just fired me up. Rock and roll fired me up, and I'm just glad that I was there with the original progenitors of rock and roll and got excited about it, fell in love with music and R&B, surf music, early Motown. But I was really a big fan of R&B and black music. There was a pirate radio station being broadcast out of Tijuana, California, with more wattage than was legal anywhere else. That's why it was a pirate radio station. And they played nothing but blues and R&B. And as a 5-year-old kid, I would be under my covers at night listening to XERB and the Wolfman Jack. You know, that's where he got his start. And so I'm just a kid, a little white kid from Glendale who had a fever for rock and roll and black music at a very early age, and somehow was lucky enough to find a way to do this for a living, and is still fortunate enough to be able to do this and be paid for it. And who, other than that, also has a life that's enjoyable and, you know, worth living. That's, you know, that's, I guess that's me in a nutshell.
Sounds like a long, strange trip, but here we are today.
Yeah.
Can you remember the time in your life when you realized, not only am I a music fan, but I am a musician?
Yes. You know, again, my sister played a role in that sort of awakening, and that was the day that she took me to a rehearsal of hers, and there were all these well-known musicians of the time, and this was 1969 or something like that. And there was Harvey Brooks from the Electric Flag on bass, and there was Greg Thomas from some other big band, and there was Dave Mason, and they were jamming, and they were starting to put together a sort of supergroup. And Gene took me to see that, and they were on a break, and I picked up, or Dave Mason handed me his Telecaster, and I was 14 years old, and I started playing it, and they were out of the room, and they all started coming back in the room, and they were like looking through the window and like pointing at me going, this kid can play. And, you know, before that I was just a kind of like play in my own room kind of guy. And I think that was a moment where I went, oh my God, yeah, I'm starting to arrive, aren't I? You know, so I guess that was an encouraging moment.
Can you remember the first time that you played and it was a gig?
Yes, I can. I flash back to a funny little club. It was a little bar right by the Santa Monica Pier in Santa Monica, California, right on the boardwalk, right under the pier. And I think it's like it's still a bar, I believe. And that was my first professional gig where I was being paid to do a show. And my next ones after that were with my sister Jean, playing, what was it called? It was called a Hootenanny Night at the Troubadour, on stage at Los Angeles Troubadour. So, yeah, just
wow,
good times, you know. Yeah.
Well, maybe you could tell all the listeners out there about your first gig with Sir Paul McCartney.
Wow, my first gig with Sir Paul McCartney was also my audition for Paul. And it's the wackiest thing in the world. You think an audition would be, you know, just a couple people in a room. Well, my audition was the Super Bowl 2002 to play one song, a song called Freedom, you might have heard of, at the Super Bowl 2002, right before the national anthem. And you want a little background on how I got to that day? I don't know if I told this story before to you, but I'd been working with my next-door neighbor here, Abe Laboriel Jr., while we were touring with some French acts in all around France with Johnny Hallyday, who's the French Elvis, and Mylène Farmer, who's sort of the French Madonna, if you will. And we both had these tours back to back to back to back over there with these two different artists. And so Abe and I became best friends. Abe left those bands to do something else, and one day called me and said, "Guess what I'm doing now?" And I said, "What?" He says, "I'm doing Paul McCartney's new record." And I went, "No way." And I said, "Well, don't wash your hand. I just can't wait to shake your hand." And anyway, so, you know, like a typical, any guy that, you know, was there when the Beatles arrived, you know, it's kind of a big deal. Anyway, so Abe was, you know, a month later, he was at a birthday party of mine, and I said, "So are you going to tour with McCartney?" And he goes, "Yeah, we are, in just a couple of months." And I said, "Well, so I know Rusty's on the other guitar, and Wix is playing keyboards, and you're on drums. Who's going to play bass when Paul goes to guitar, or when Paul goes to piano, and who's going to play guitar when he's on bass?" And he goes, "Well, we're looking for a guitar player who plays bass." And I literally put my right hand up and said, "I'd love a shot at that." And Abe put my name forward to Paul's producer, David Kahn. David Kahn called me a few days later, asked for a meeting with me, where he just put a guitar in my lap and a bass in my lap and just talked to me, and we talked about music. And David Kahn said, "Hey," after 40 minutes, "I have a great feeling about this. This was really good. You know, Paul's a vibe guy. I'll put your name forward. I don't know what'll happen, but, you know, we'll give it a shot." And I went, "Okay, thanks," and went about my stuff. Got a call the next day. "Brian, can you be on an airplane to come to New Orleans tomorrow to play the Super Bowl with Paul McCartney?" And I'm like, oh, my God. I was just shaking. So I got to New Orleans. I left the next day. I got to New Orleans. I swear to God, I walked around the town for like 4 hours straight just to burn off some of my excess energy because I was just way too nervous to like talk. I would be like, that's what I would have said. So I thought if I just walked all day, maybe I'd calm down. It, of course, didn't work at all. You know, we had a private dinner at the hotel with him later that night, and he was very gracious and really nice. And the next day we had our sound check, and before you knew it, I had played one song with Paul McCartney for the Super Bowl for 77,000 people and the millions of home viewers at 2002 Super Bowl. And it was just surreal. You know, we were in a skybox after we did our pre-show song, and he's introducing me to all the celebrities that are coming in to meet him. And Paul says to Winona Ryder, he says to Winona, the artist Winona, he says, "Yeah, Brian's new. You know, we've just met him. He's just come aboard." And I go, "Yeah, this is my audition, a nice little intimate audition." But yeah, that was my first time, and as far as I knew, that was going to be it. You know, just I was super grateful. I mean, you know, one song, I thought that'd do it. Well, we come back to the hotel after that, and Paul's down in the bar, and we're telling stories. And then finally Paul gets up to go to sleep, and he comes over and he goes, "Okay, good night, guys." And he gives me a hug and he says, "Well, welcome aboard, Brian. Stick with Abe. They'll show you the ropes." You know, and I couldn't believe it because I just played one song, and I'd already said goodbye and thank you to him. And he had this other idea that maybe I should stick around. So I ran home and got a bass and got, you know, the correct bass. I had a bass, but I got another bass. I got an acoustic guitar, a 12-string, put them on stands, got a stack of CDs, standing up, microphone, second bedroom. I went full Ted Kaczynski, stayed indoors for about 5 weeks straight, just woodshedding all of his material. And then had our first day of real rehearsal 5 weeks later, And at the end of the day, he said, "Okay, guys, sounds great. See you tomorrow." So it wasn't until that moment that I thought, oh, my God, I'm going on tour with Paul McCartney. Now it's 7 years later. You know,
What a great story.
it's insane. I don't
It's
know how
almost-
that happens.
Yeah.
Again, just a little white kid from Glendale. I mean, I don't know why that happened, but there you go.
I was hoping you could tell all the listeners out there about your new record.
My new record. Well, thanks. Yeah. This is a follow-up to my '06 release called Mondo Magneto on my own little label called Hooray Records. The new one is called This Way Up. I'm about 60% done with it, I think, right now. And these songs are a newer collection, all written around the same period of time over the last year and a half or so, whereas Mondo Magneto was made up largely of songs that I already had, in my back pocket that just needed to be rewritten, or, the lyrics needed to be redone, or this or that. These are all brand new songs, so it might be a more cohesive group of songs in a way, but still a lot of diversity, I guess, for me. But it's hard to know when you talk about your own material. You don't know what to say, really. But it's up-tempo, and the title of the album, This Way Up, really that's the stamp that you see on packages in England. Instead of This Side Up, it says This Way Up. And I thought at this point, maybe we could all use a little something to tell us which way up, And so that's what it's about. It's a little bit uplifting, a little funny, some other personal songs on there as well, as I did before on Mondo Magneto. But, we'll see how it does. It's just fun. It's just, I write because I have to. These songs just have to find their way out somewhere,
Well, there's two songs from that album that you're going to play for all the listeners out there. The first one, I was hoping you could tell us about. It's called I Found You.
Yeah, it's sort of an up-tempo rocker, kind of a British invasion kind of shuffle, one of those English shuffles. And it actually started off as a straight eighth-note rocker. I brought it into the studio, and on drums is Pete Thomas from Elvis Costello's band, and Davey Farragher from Elvis Costello's band, and Adam McDougall on keyboards playing these fantastic, trippy keyboard parts where he plays an old Wurlitzer, and then he puts a stomp box on top, like a guitar delay or phasers or flangers. And while he's playing the keyboards with his right hand, he's playing with the flangers and the delays with his left hand, making these crazy sounds. Anyway, so I start playing the song, and we're having a hard time getting the feel right for this eighth-note rocker. And Davey Farragher says, I tell you what if it was more like this? And he started going, da-doom, doom, 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 ba-doom, ba-doom, da. He says, because that's Pete Thomas's sort of meat and potatoes favorite beat in the world. And we had it in one take. It was unbelievable. It was just like so easy, So the song is sort of about, ever since I was a kid, I was always sort of searching and seeking and trying to better myself, and whether it was spiritually or through substances, I was experimenting and trying to improve, and I guess, looking for something more than just this day-to-day human condition, I think the song is, the verses talk about all the ways which I tried looking before, and none of them really paid off till I found you. And it's obviously a romantic kind of idea, finding the right person. When actual fact, it's also about finding meditation, because I started meditating about 3 years ago. That was the solution and the thing that finally sort of made it all work, So fantastic new addition to my life. Yeah.
Well, let's hear it. Performing his song I Found You, that was Brian Ray here on the Paul Leslie Hour. Now we'd like to take you back to our interview with recording artist, singer-songwriter, and guitarist and sometime bassist with Paul McCartney, our special guest, Brian Ray. When someone listens to the new record, or they see you in concert, what do you want them to get out of the experience of listening?
These days as an independent artist, I'm not really doing this being my own stuff, my solo stuff, to get rich, because the record business, as you might have heard, has changed a little bit. So, but I'm doing this because I have to write songs. It's just, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to write songs, and I did write songs. I wanted to write lyrics and melodies, and just for me, it's one of the most satisfying things in the world. So if anything, I would want people just to share some joy, get into some of the melodies or some of the things that I did, get into the guitar parts and the hooks that I hear, because hook-oriented, I like things that just stick in your mind, whether it's a guitar part or a melody. So when I get letters and emails from kids that are younger, like 16, 15, 17-year-old aspiring guitarists who found me somehow and are huge fans, that means everything to me. It's really about that. I've got stacks of emails from kids who are just big fans, and it's like, if I can inspire other kids to say yes and to show up, and to show up even when they don't think opportunity is right for them, and just say yes because it might lead to another opportunity that is right for them, and take that leap of faith and believe in themselves. If I can do that just a little bit, then that would make me feel great,
I'm embarrassed that I didn't ask this the last time, but I was listening to the show, and I didn't ask you who your biggest influences are.
Well, as I was saying before, the earliest rockers, the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, the Who, but on a guitar level, like as I was learning my craft to play guitar, it was about Albert King, Albert Collins, all these great black blues players, I was into Peter Green, Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, all the sort of guys that you would sort of expect from a sort of classic rock, British invasion, blues rock guitar standpoint. Those are the guys that I cut my teeth on, that I really loved the most.
One thing I did ask you was what you had been listening to, and you turned me on to Madeleine Peru.
Oh, yeah.
So I was wondering, what have you been listening to lately?
Oh, I'm really loving an artist named Ray LaMontagne. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Oh, yeah.
But he's just a fantastic sort of rootsy, more of an acoustic songwriter guy who writes in this sort of, God, I guess he's like a modern day Cat Stevens or something like that, but a little less of the child music that Cat Stevens was so good at. How his songs sort of sound like you might hear him on Sesame Street or something like that.
Right.
Whereas Ray LaMontagne is a little bit more mature and up to date lyrically, but his voice sounds like Otis Redding. And since I've always been a fan of great rhythm and blues singers, like the great Etta James that I worked with for so long, and guys like Otis Redding and Wilson Pickett and all those guys, that's why I like Ray LaMontagne. He's got this soul voice.
Last time we got to hear about your experiences with Etta James, so this time I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about your experiences with Smokey Robinson.
Oh, Smokey, right, got it. Well, did I tell you about the writing of the song that I did with him and how that happened?
We didn't get to touch on it.
Okay. Well, one more time, this is one of those, just say yes moments where I had turned most of my attention to songwriting. And I had a songwriting partner, a great guy named Steve Legasic, who I still write with. Got a song with him on my new record. And this is 1986, and we're writing away, and I'm trying to sort of get off of the road and turn my attention to songwriting. And we had a bunch of very mediocre songs. And then I heard that my friends were producing Smokey Robinson's new record. So I called my friends who were producing it and said, could Steve and I submit a song? And they said, don't bother, because Smokey's such a great writer. We've got tons of songs. We don't need him. So I told my partner Steve, they don't want to hear our songs. And I was just all bummed and discouraged. And Steve said, let's do it anyway. And I said, yeah, let's do it anyway. So I had this title, One Heartbeat, Let's take it one heartbeat at a time. Forget about a day at a time. Let's just take it one heartbeat at a time. And Steve started playing with some chords that were sort of reminiscent of Smokey's great song, Tracks of My Tears, in that vein. And, our goal was just to write something that we thought Smokey might write himself or would certainly be comfortable singing. And as a comedian writes, a comedic writer writes for a comedian, or as a screenwriter writes for, a dramatic actor, you kind of know what these people will and won't do because they've created a body of work. Same with Smokey. He's a romantic guy. He likes very simple, sort of poetic, sweet things that are a little different than you expected. So we really examined line by line to try to tailor it for him. We finished the song in 2 weeks with a demo. We turned it in to the producers, even though they had told us not to, on a Friday. Steve and I went out of town, went to up with his parents at a cabin up by a lake, came back Sunday night, and there was a message on our machine. What a great song. Smokey loves this song. We're cutting it Thursday. Come to Conway, 32-track digital. We're doing it just like your demo. Bring all your gear. You get arrangement as well. And so that Thursday we recorded Smokey Robinson's song, One Heartbeat. He did a great vocal on it. They decided it should be the single. It was a giant record for him. And then he titled the album One Heartbeat as well on Motown Records, 1987, I guess it was. And now it's over 3 million airplays on that song.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'm still in touch with him. I just got a text saying Smokey wanted to see if Paul was available to sing with him in London for an upcoming show and do a little duet or something like that. So we're still in touch.
There's another song on the album. It's called Very Happy Song. I was hoping you could tell us about that one.
Very Happy Song. Okay, well, my web gal, who's been so great to help me with my website, brianray.com. Clever title, isn't that? Really.
It works.
Think about that. brianray.com. How did he do it? Well, she one day said to me after the Hooray Records release of Mondo Magneto, she said, well, I'm your biggest fan. I love this stuff. This sounds so cool. I sing it and I play it in my car and I'm so into it. She said, but I just recognized something. She said, even the songs that sound happy on your album are actually sad lyrically. She said, so what's up with that? Why don't you write something happy? And I said, I hate happy music. I hate happy art. Happy art sucks. I mean, who has anything valid to say that's happy all the time? Come on. Think of the great artists. They were all tortured and dramatic and pathetic. I said, that's more my speed. Great art doesn't come out of happiness. And I had this long thing with her, but as things do, it kind of sat in the back of my mind, and I thought about it, and I thought, there's got to be a way to write a happier song. And then I just couldn't help myself. I wrote a depressing song in a very depressing song inside a happy song. And that's what a very happy song is all about.
Very good. Let's hear it. Our special guest is singer, songwriter, and guitarist Brian Ray. Few people can say that they have done some of the things that you've done, especially when you're playing in front of multitudes of people. So through the eyes of Brian Ray, what is it like when you're on stage and you look out at a sea of people when you're playing the guitar?
Wow. Well, for me, it's an exhilarating, very satisfying, amazing experience and I don't take it for granted. I look out there and face it, it's really because of Paul's incredible popularity and his graciousness and his personality that he has such a giant audience that reacts the way they react. But for us, it's a show to watch the faces and to watch the people move. It's unbelievable. We see these people just melt. They grow younger, song by song. They're crying, they're screaming. It's fantastic, and the audiences are getting younger and younger and younger as his music is sort of past another generation, and these kids have discovered the Beatles and Paul McCartney's solo stuff and Wings. And for me, I guess, to get to your question, it's just like I am doing the exact thing that I wanted to do when I was 3 years old in my sister's room while she was playing the Elvis Presley records, and I get paid for it. It's like somebody slapped me. I can't even believe this, but I just feel like I'm living sort of a dream, and I just am very grateful that it's continued on for this long. My plan was that I'd get this kind of success by the time I was 22. That's what I thought was going to happen. But I had a few things to straighten out. I had to stop doing, drugs and drinking, the kind of drugs that would make me hallucinate that I should have all this by 22, I think. I needed to just calm down. So what if it happened when I was 48,
Well, you just mentioned dreams, and that was going to be my next question. You're a man you've clearly lived your dreams. Mm. What is a dream that maybe has not happened yet, but you're working on making it happen?
I would say having a kid would be a really great dream. After all this time, I've had quite enough of me, and, it is a strange business. It's a strange role to play. And I've been very fortunate to have the career that I've built. It's crazy when I look back at it. And I'm lucky it's still growing. I still really I'm passionate about music. I'm passionate about playing live. And I'm still passionate about writing and doing my own record. But somewhere along the way, I forgot to have a family. I was so busy getting all the foundation and the groundwork done so a family could fit in there. But I forgot to add the family. So, I'm seeing someone I'm really fond of, and maybe that's something that could happen.
What is it you like about music?
Nothing. I hate that stuff. Do you like that? You like music?
Of course.
Music. Well, I guess ever since I was a little kid, it was my first drug. So I liked escaping. And music offered a great escape, as good as any Steve McQueen, escape. It was a great escape. It opened a world in 3 minutes, like a book does in a week, In 3 minutes, you have a sort of a film for the ears. And I always closed my eyes and listened to music, and I would make up scenes and characters, and instruments would be, expressions of the lyrics. And, I always saw music in a almost visual way. So for me, it's always been an escape.
After having had the chance to talk to a couple of the members of this band, Abe Laboriel Jr., Rusty Anderson, and then shortly Wix Wickens, what do these people mean to you?
I've never met them. I have no idea. Did they say they know me?
Because they seem to have met you.
Okay. Well, we'll get that straight, but not ringing a bell. No, I'm kidding. So, I guess we're lucky guys because we get along really, really well together musically. Now, that part's not that unusual. It's an unspoken communication music. It's a dialogue. It's a script, that you kind of improvise on every night. And people who don't even care for each other can do that really well and even look like they care for each other. But we're super lucky because we really care for each other, and we hang out way too late all the time, going to dinners and doing this and that. I always have breakfast with Wix, sometimes dinner with Rusty, and then we all four have dinner together, and we laugh our heads off, and we're great pals. And I think that comes across on stage. People can see that we're also pals. And Paul's such a great hang, and it's really a trickle-down thing. I think in any company, in any business, in any government, who's at the top And how does that filter down to the relationships of everyone under them, right down to the audience? And just look what Paul does. What happens because that guy is the kind of guy he is. Open, smart, creative, hilarious, childlike in some ways, generous. All of those things filter down, and I think we're recipients of that.
Well, you guys get to go all around the world playing this music. What is your favorite place to play?
I have to say, among my top 5 have been the second night at Fenway that we just did. New York City is always unbelievable. Mexico City, off the hook. France, what a great audience in France, in Paris. The Colosseum in Italy, magical. When we played outside the Colosseum and there were 500,000 lighters in the air, that was pretty stunning. The feedback that you get pouring at you, it's just as loud as the music going at them to us in another way. I mean, a loudness in terms of the feeling that you get, a loud feeling of joy and gratitude, Some of the bigger cities, they don't show it in that way. They show it in other ways. And then places like Raleigh, Des Moines, Omaha, these places that are sort of secondary markets, unbelievable audiences. Yeah.
Interesting.
Chicago, all great. And I love playing my hometown of L.A. I mean, I have a blast there.
What is something about you that most people that are listening may be surprised to know?
I have a tail. Not many people know that. A fuzzy, long tail. Much like a lion, it has a little puff at the end of it of hair. I keep it in my pants most of the time.
Most of the time.
It's not allowed. I don't know. That's the main thing.
Well, let me ask you this. Of all the songs that you've written, which song to you means the most?
That's a good question. It's a funny thing that you should say that, ask that, because just this morning I was thinking about a song on my first album called All I Know. And it was one of the 4 songs that was written expressly for that record. And it's a song that came out one evening in about 40 minutes, top to tails, lyrics pretty much done, melody done, music done. Boom, there it was, And it was a night I set aside to write a song, so I'd set up the right atmosphere for it at home. I had my cassette recorder, a legal pad, guitar, an electric guitar plugged into a little distorted amp, and this ballad came out, and the payoff line, and it's a love song basically, and it's saying, after all of this stuff, after all that I thought I knew, actually I don't know. I don't know squat. So it's, the payoff line is, all I know is I don't know. And that was because I had fallen in love with somebody and felt like I was new again, and didn't really know exactly as much as I thought maybe I knew. And it was a humbling and beautiful thing.
Of all the songs on Mondo Magneto, that song is my favorite.
That's weird. Really?
Yep, definitely.
Wow, then there was a connection this morning because it was on my mind this morning, and I haven't really thought about that song much over this period. But yeah, it's the most intimate song on the record, and in fact was written about the woman who I'm seeing again now after 4 years off for bad behavior. She and I are seeing each other, and she'll be here in a couple hours, as a matter of fact.
When it comes to romance, a Valentino and a trucker's hat.
Yeah.
Yep. I always wondered what that meant.
Well, Rudolph Valentino was supposed to be one of the, great legendary lovers of the stage and screen and life, right? Rudolph Valentino back in the, 20s was when he was sowing his oats. And so when it comes to romance, Valentino in a trucker's cap, it just to me was a funny image, like this very suave ladies' man, but he's wearing like a John Deere hat, And I just thought that was just a funny thing. So it's just a little visual image.
Well, I have two final questions. What is your all-time favorite meal?
All-time favorite meal? Wow. That's hard to put down in one answer. I'll tell you this. Just about any meal before one of our shows with Paul, he has the best vegetarian catering on planet Earth. Every night, some crazy new treats you've never had before. They very seldom ever repeat themselves. And it's done with such love and care. It's this catering company called Eat Your Heart Out. And every meal is magnificent. So I'd have to go with that.
I remember the last time you were on this show, you told all of our listeners to turn off their television sets and go out and vote.
Ah, right.
This time I'd like to ask you, this show's going out all over the world, thanks to technology. What would you like to say to all the people that are listening in?
Keep your televisions off. There's no good news on there. No, I would just say stay involved, whatever your passion is. In terms of politics, I mean, there's everybody has their freedom of choice in that area. But fortunately, that's what makes America so cool. But I would just say stay involved and watch for apathy. Be vigilant and be passionate about your life and get out there and live it. And I guess I also noticed that everyone's on their iPhones and their BlackBerries and their computers, and you'll see a table of 6 people, and everyone's looking down in their lap at some glowing thing, and it's a BlackBerry, or an iPhone. And I think that's kind of bizarre. I remember the first time I noticed it was in Australia in '94, a table full of people, and they were all on cell phones, and they hadn't really gotten into the Los Angeles day-to-day to that degree yet. And I just thought it was such a strange and hilarious thing, I would just hope for a time when we can shut those things off and talk more again,
Interact as people.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Brian Ray, thank you so much for this interview. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks, man. It's been a total joy. Thanks a lot. What a treat.
Thanks.